So the genius of modular production, pioneered in the Zhou dynasty, went beyond the production of ritual bronze vessels. It came to inform many aspects of Chinese artistic production. For instance, the system of wooden brackets, interlocking wooden brackets used to support the elegant swooping roofs of Chinese architecture, were also a repeated modular system of units. And we don't have much of that surviving because wood architecture doesn't survive the way stone or bronze does. But we know that this began at this time and continued through the next thousands and thousands of years of Chinese culture. Perhaps the most dazzling example of modular production is this army of ceramic soldiers that were made to guard the Qin emperor in his tomb. To explain that, we need to step back and look at the historical change, the periods of change that are happening as we're watching this art history unfold. By 465 BCE, right here, the Zhou rulers were enmeshed in perpetual warfare with neighboring states. For more than 200 years, we have an appropriately named Warring States period when Zhou dynasty control is breaking down and there is political turmoil, military conflict. So this map shows the small kingdoms and rival fiefs that were vying for dominance. So the Zhou state right here, surrounded by the state of Han. We've got the state of Qin and numerous others all engaging in conflict. Strangely enough, this time of warfare was a time of great achievement in art and philosophy. So certainly the mass production of bronzes reaches a high point. At the same time, this period is known as the 1,000 schools of philosophy, where many important philosophical ideas get forged, developed. Now, no one has actually counted them as 1,000, but we are going to see that there were, of those innumerable ones, of those many, 2 will have lasting impact on Chinese history, Confucianism, and Taoism. But first, back to politics. How does this warring period end? It ends in 256 BCE when the state of Qin takes control. And this will mean an actual leveling of the walls. These are walls between these states. They built walls because they had military conflicts, and you build walls to try to keep the soldiers out. When the Qin Empire takes control, those walls will be demolished and we will be getting the beginning of an imperial state. The Qin Emperor Shi Huangdi will call himself the first August Emperor. And so here we have the beginning of imperial China. Now, Shi Huangdi is infamous, right? Infamous, remember, means famous for all the wrong reasons. Famous for being a monster. So he pursued the policy of the iron fist, meaning he was a totalitarian, authoritarian dictator who used the constant threat of state violence to control the populace. And as an example of that, here's a painting. It was not made during his lifetime. It was made in the later Qing dynasty, so 1,000 years later, basically. But what it's showing is it's showing the emperor having his henchmen, his soldiers, take begging Confucian scholars, they're all in green here, and throwing them in a pit to be buried alive. So he's trying to control thought, to institute thought control, and to make competing or dissenting ideas something that you can be killed for. He also tried to confiscate all weapons as part of this policy of control. So one of his lasting marks on the literal landscape and the imaginative landscape of China is his long wall. Building a long wall to keep out invaders, even as he was demolishing walls between states to control a large territory. And in the interest of control and dominance, he imposed a uniform administration. Having a well-controlled large empire goes with having an effective bureaucracy to do the controlling. What is most fascinating about him for so many people is the tomb. We've been seeing the culture of the tomb as the site where art is made. And his tomb goes beyond any tomb we have seen so far. So this is an actual diagram of just one part of it. This is a diagram of the rows of soldiers that are arranged in a pit tomb. And there they are, the terracotta soldiers whose purpose is to guard him into the afterlife. But they're only one part of his burial complex. So the actual tomb mound has not yet been excavated. The rumors are that the float around on the internet are that they're concerned that he's booby-trapped it. I think probably the more reliable explanation is that it has to be done incredibly carefully with really advanced techniques and painstaking techniques to preserve as you go. The legends of what's in his tomb are extraordinary. It is said that he had an entire palace buried with him, with simulations of the Yangtze and the Yellow Rivers. It was like he actually wanted to take all of China and his kingdom with him. And that mercury was used in the rivers to make it seem, these kind of Disneyland-esque rivers, to make it seem like water was flowing. So then he had outside his tomb, he had the terracotta warrior pits where the armies are standing in formation at the ready to attack or defend. And then there are surrounding burials, including the tombs of the craftspeople, because if you worked on his tomb, you had to be killed and buried. Also, if you were one of his exotic animals in his zoo or his horses, there are also human skeletons of sacrificial victims. But in terms of modular production, these soldiers are incredibly lifelike. They seem to be standing at attention. They are life-size. And so we would imagine that they were each made out of clay by hand from top to bottom. But in fact, the reality effect, which was even stronger originally than what you see in this photograph, because this soldier's armor was originally lacquered and painted, and he would have held in his hands real bronze weapons. That reality effect actually depended on a very simple system of mass production. So the scholars who studied this in depth have shown how the legs of the terracotta warriors were produced using the same molds that were used for the drainage pipes of the Qin palace. Because if you're making thousands upon thousands of soldiers for the Qin emperor, and you know he's going to bury you alive if you don't do it right, well, he'll probably bury you alive anyways, then you better have a good system to make this thing happen. You can't waste time and ask for an extension like a community college student with a nice professor. So, for instance, these hands, it turns out there are only a few kinds of hands with different thumbs that were reused, and then they would be slightly modified to hold the weapons. So they showed how out of standardized parts that are then individualized, modified to create a reality effect. You can create what seems to be almost a living army, but they're made out of clay.